Alright guys, HyDra back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. We had our first look at new Modern Warfare 3 gameplay last night. Some questionable players, got to be said, but potentially the slide cancel is back in business based on this footage. But also OpTic gives his thoughts on the removal of control as the third game mode in the CDL, saying that last year in Modern Warfare 2, the pros tried to get rid of it for 3 hardpoints, 2 searches, or maybe even the other way around. This year we've got Capture the Flag in play. Definitely a reasonable chance right now that we never see control again as a competitive mode. Very much enjoy to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. Happy birthday to Ben J. Wasim as of yesterday. Also wanted to quickly mention here, I believe where that clip of Ben throwing the basketball was at this swag LAN event that they're doing. And I'm guessing the FaZe setup type thing here because Zuma was here, obviously MettalZ was here. Crimsix was actually playing in this and ended up coming in top 13, I think. So yeah, 13th place. As you guys can see, he says he's barely touched a controller in months. 100k, by the way, on the line for this one. And it's Biffle and Rug that win it with an absolutely monstrous performance relative to the competition. So yeah, Biffle's going to be playing some more of these CDL Warzone tourneys over the coming weeks. He duoed up with Shotzzy obviously a few days ago, and he's a rather good player, it's got to be said. I mean, he was noted in those 1v1s at the start of Vanguard as actually been able to compete with a lot of the pros, and I do wonder how many of these players, if they really did at the start of this new game, gave it a go to try and see if they could make it work in challenges, go to the Pro-Am for example. If it doesn't work for them, fine, go back to Warzone, still make money in tourneys like this. But if it does work, then, you know, maybe there's a chance there for some of these guys. But only a very select few, as far as I'm concerned, actually have the ability if they really try to give it a go. Now, this from Drazah, he's going home, I'm guessing, to Alaska here, catching a flight. I never thought I'd see the day that Simp would be in the replies here saying travel safe to Drazah. But, you know, time moves on quite quickly, it seems, this season. That is one of the storylines that's died down for the new year, but there's certainly plenty of other ones. This was another big story of a few, well, weeks ago, really, that has now had a further update on the Minnesota Rocker. We believe they're merging with G2, and this is pretty much confirmed now, it seems, because JKL reached out for comment from Minnesota, and they basically said, no rebrand yet, but it's definitely possible, which pretty much confirms this is a done deal. Wonder what you guys think about this, because the rumor has it, according to JKL, Rocker will be retaining its branding for the upcoming season. This is largely because we believe the CDL might step away from the necessity for city-based names, which I think is inevitable at some point. I think Microsoft will certainly do it when they come in. Doesn't mean you can't keep your city-based name, especially given Minnesota are arguably the best team at actually activating with that local audience. Rocker is a great brand. I think they've done a really good job there in that local activation, and there's probably many Minnesota Rocker fans that if they just rebranded to G2 Esports and completely forgot they were ever in Minnesota, I think that would leave a bit of a sour taste. Now, should they just become G2 eventually? Arguably, yes, it's a bigger brand. It does kind of make sense, I would say, for them to do that, and maybe G2 can kind of still consider Minnesota to be their de facto home in some respects in this case. But still, for now, they're going to keep things as they are, it seems. And yeah, as JKL confirms the replies, Brett Diamond confirmed to Deserto, nothing is changing for the new year, but declines to confirm or deny the possibility of a change going into next year. So maybe there's a rebrand coming, and as we say, for next season in 24-25, it's very possible the CDL looks really rather different as far as I'm concerned. And they might just drop the necessity for city-based stuff, and therefore teams could keep it if they want to. They might decide not to. And, you know, G2 is a big brand. If they come in right, G2 will want to succeed. They'll want to change things up, I imagine. So we'll see their roster in the coming days, but it hasn't been confirmed as of yet. We think Accuracy, Lins, Vivid, and Awakening, as we saw last night. But that's the present update on the Minnesota Rocker side. Now let's talk about Modern Warfare 3. This was confirmed last night at Gamescom, the open beta early access dates. So, you know, October 6th and 7th, that's the first date we're going to see anything really on the PlayStation exclusive. Then the crossplay beta a week after that. Also confirmed it's going to be October the 5th, the day before, where that's when the multiplayer reveal is, which is kind of late, let's be honest. I know many pros were tweeting this saying like, damn, we've got to wait the end of August, the whole of September, and then basically 1 week into October to get any gameplay at all on the multiplayer side. So I certainly get it, but I mean, whatever. Like, these things tend to happen this way nowadays. Now, there are a few things to note here. Firstly, this was seen, this ledge hang perspective. Now, this might not be available in multiplayer, but it might be. I mean, this is obviously campaign footage, so it might be disabled, but the feature once again exists in the game, and it was quite a big talking point even this season, right, of certain spots where you could do this this to rather questionable effect. This is also the full gameplay we saw. When I was a kid, or like way younger, and I used to watch these like gameplay footages, I always thought that it was actually a bot, like an actual programmed AI, not really AI back then, but like an actual bot that would play the game. But it is a real person, I think, who plays in these games. But it doesn't look like real person gameplay footage. I mean, they just Ben Jane. Okay, didn't know. This is Lil Jon. Sorry, it's Lil Jon POV as far as I'm concerned. But I mean, like, look at this guy. Fair play, whatever. This is the gameplay. We do see some sort of, I mean, is this a slide cancel, right? You guys can make your mind up on this. Does he slide to cover and then kind of cancel it? I mean, he doesn't do it very cleanly, but it's definitely possible. So, look, I don't know. It's not the best. One of the classic roasts, it seems, nowadays is, you know, you play like an E3 or Gamescom dev or something, right, for these gameplay footages. I don't know why they don't get one of the better players. Like, surely there's some developer that's actually good at it. Or I don't know why they do this. It's always been the case, though, in COD. It's not just a recent thing that this gameplay is not played by particularly proficient players, shall we say. But anyway, there is still some questions about darkness, and I mean, the game looks the same, you know what I mean? Does this not just look like the most recent game? It does. Let's be honest, it was always going to be a premium release. I mean, come on, let's not be kidding me here. This is basically Modern Warfare 2 Part 2, and, you know, hopefully it's going to be significantly better, of course, with many changes, improvements, updates, new maps, etc. But still, I mean, there's going to be lots of things that share with Modern Warfare 2. As Parasite says, it's literally last year's game with more mechanics and faster animations. Not a bad thing necessarily, right? But, you know, lots of changes are a W. But if you speculate too much, you can probably look at last year's game and figure out what a lot of things are going to look like with the changes that we believe are going to be the case going forwards. Now, with those new maps coming into play, it's raised a lot of questions around control as a game mode, whether it's still going to be viable. And we had lots of discussions every year at this point of getting rid of control. It doesn't seem to have played as well, especially since Black Ops 4. Specialist 5v5 control was great. In Black Ops Cold War, for example, it was okay, pretty good, but since then I think it's been somewhat downhill, to be honest. 4v4, I don't know, it hasn't really been the same control over the last few years, as far as I'm concerned. So the pros apparently discussed even last season. Now let's not forget, in Vanguard, control didn't even exist at the start of the game. The Challenger players had to play Hardpoint Search and Destroy only for the first part of that title before they added control in like December and then fixed a load of bugs by January so the pros could actually play it for the kickoff that year in Vanguard. Last year it was in the game earlier, so they played it again. But again, Octane says, and Crowder agrees, that the pros were very close to getting rid of it, very close to agreeing, you know what, let's just not even bother with control, not bring a replacement in, let's just not bother with control and go for 3 hardpoints or 3 search and destroys. Very interesting question what you would do between those two options, but especially now there might actually be a viable, and there really should be a viable, third game mode candidate. Seems to me that if the pros wanted to get rid of it last year, and now there's a realistic third game mode opportunity, it's probably going to go this year.
Listen, I know we want a third game mode, but like, let's try to figure out how to make hardpoint S&D work in a 5-game series and just those 2 modes.
I mean, there were serious discussions about it last year.
There was, yeah.
There was very serious discussions about hardpoint S&D last year.
How serious?
Like we were talking, like
really
it got to the point
close.
where we were figuring out like series, how things would go with vetoes, advantage, like who would pick whether 3 S&Ds, 2 hardpoints. Like it almost got to the point with how poor our map pool was with control that like teams were voting on if they would rather have 3 hardpoints or 3 S&Ds last year.
Yeah. But here's a question for you though. This is like the biggest one, and I'm curious to hear all of your opinions on this, and even chat. What should it be, 3 S&Ds or 3 hardpoints?
Ooh.
That's like the toughest question.
I see. I don't think this is. I don't think this is a
tough.
tough question personally.
Really?
But
It should be 3 S&Ds.
I disagree. I think for the I think the entertainment. I think the entertainment value of it, yes. But I think 3 hardpoints by far is the more skilled team wins majority of the time.
No, it does remind me a little bit of the clip that Crimsix came up with back in 2021 where he said that basically Warzone was going to be the third game mode in the CDL, and I don't really know if any of this is actually true. Maybe it was Crimsix just saying things, but still, hopefully that's not the case and we do get a better option, such as Capture the Flag. This was the variant map set that we used to play on. Well, I didn't play on it, but, you know, pros used to play on back in MWIII 2009. Search and Destroy was played on High Rise, Invasion, Scrappy, Terminal, Karachi, and then it was CTF and Demolition then the third game mode. mode. Now, thankfully, we've now invented Hardpoint. Hardpoint, okay, is King of the Hill, similar in Halo, stuff like this, but it's different. What Trek came up with in Black Ops 2, I think is just the best version of COD that we have. Personally, I love Hardpoint. I know that I used to have discussions with DeSoto Mike at events, and he would always say, nah, COD needs to be search and destroy only, you know, 5 maps for search and destroy in a series, and I was always like, that is such a terrible... I don't know if he's changed his opinion on this, maybe he hasn't, but I always thought that was a terrible idea. Like, as I said the other day, we're just B-Tech Counter-Strike at that point, and search and destroy is arguably one of the most random game modes. It's a great game mode, search, for Call of Duty, and in a Game 5 scenario, I think that search and destroy is absolutely the best thing. As a series decider, search and destroy makes the most sense. Mainly because, maybe not mainly, but one of the reasons because that it's never over, right? Let's say you're up 5-1 Game 5. You can't take your foot off the gas. You can't take it easy. If you're a team that's, you know, if you're a fan of a team that's up 5-1 Game 5, you can never relax, right? Whereas if your team's up 240 to 160 in a hard point, or even 240 to 80, you can relax. You know the team's going to get the points you need at the end of the series, and there's nothing like a Game 5 Round 11 search and destroy, and it's not rare, you know, it's not particularly often you're going to get a 250, 249 hard point to close the series. So as far as I'm concerned, if you are going to do just hard point and just search and destroy, you really want to do 3 hard points. That's my opinion. I agree with Crowder on this. I don't want 3 search and destroys in a series. I would get bored watching that, to be perfectly honest. And I think the hard point is the game mode that makes the best out of competitive Call of Duty. There's so much to it in terms of teamwork and skill, and like skill gap in hardpoint is, if you watch like pros play in the old school 2Ks and 5Ks in the first round against the amateur players, like sometimes, you know, against randoms basically, sometimes those teams that get decent rounds in search and destroy compete quite well, but the pros could literally 0 point club teams in hardpoint. Like, that's how big the skill gap was, and I think still is in that game mode. So to me, hardpoint is like the best of competitive COD, but search and destroy is also a fantastic game mode and is especially useful for series deciders. My preference would be start the series with hardpoint, but then it's like, well, do you go hardpoint, search, hardpoint? But I think Game 5 needs to be search. So I would personally just go hardpoint, search, hardpoint, search, and just do 2 in a row where control used to be. That would be my preference on how to construct a series. I'm sure some of you guys would disagree and say you want 3 searches or whatever, but maybe it's not a question that we need to answer if we can actually just have a replacement for control, right? I mean, it's fine as it is with 2 hardpoints, 2 searches, and 1 control, I believe at the very least. But, you know, if there's 3 hardpoints, that's okay. But ideally, there's capture the flag instead, I think. So that's what we might be going towards, and if the pros basically wanted control gone last year, but they didn't quite fully agree on how to execute it, because you can imagine that if you're a team like FaZe, and you know you're going to be great at search and destroy, even if you love hardpoint as a game mode, FaZe probably will be voting for 3 search and destroys in a series. Now, Crowder actually himself said that he'd much prefer 3 hardpoints, but would it have been the best interest of his team to have 3 hardpoints rather than 3 search and destroys? You know, maybe, but maybe not. I mean, if there was 3 searches in a series last year, FaZe could just win a series off winning search, which doesn't really feel right as far as I'm concerned, but I guess it's the same thing. If there's 3 hardpoints in a series, you can also do the same thing. But if capture the flag is good, these old school maps actually come back and play as we'd hopefully expect them to, the spawns are good, then it seems very likely as it stands that control isn't seen in the upcoming game. Maybe Treyarch get it back again for their title, definitely possible, but if a lot of pros don't like control, as they don't, and a lot of fans don't for the last few years, it's possible that we never actually see it as a game mode again, and developers stray away from it, more into trying to make capture the flag, and maybe one day Uplink could return if jetpacks come back. Definitely intrigued to your thoughts and all that stuff in the comments section below. Just a couple of things to close out with. Some crazy stats here from Brian's stats on Simp. Competed in 31 tournaments now. He's 26-5 in winners round 1 matches, 84% win rate, which is pretty absurd compared to many other teams. 11-3 in his first match after getting knocked to losers brackets. Only lost 2 consecutive games in 3 of those 31 tournaments, which is pretty wild. Didn't even touch the losers bracket in over 50% of tournaments that he plays, which to be fair is absolutely ridiculous stats. aBeZy isn't far away, but unfortunately for aBeZy's like legacy in some respect, even though it shouldn't really matter that much, he played in World War II with Enigma 6, so his stats on this kind of get carried down a little bit, even though ever since he's teamed up with Simp, their numbers are the same. Like, you know, he always gets he doesn't quite have the beautiful numbers that Simp has on this regard. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.